This video contains Michael Chase's personal recollections of surviving the tragic Boston Marathon bombing. His account includes references to traumatic events involving destruction, fear, severe bodily injury, loss of limbs, and loss of life. The story is shared with the intention of reflection, awareness, and inspiring resilience. Please prioritize your mental health and well-being while watching or listening. This content was created in collaboration with James Madison University's social media marketing class during the fall 2025 semester, instructed by Professor Brooke Rhodes. Since this interview, Michael Chase has published his memoir, A Reflective Journey: Before the Blast, Beyond the Fear, and Back to Purpose. Signed copies are available for purchase on his website. Check out the video description for a link where you can purchase your signed copy today. We hope the story inspires you and serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and of the heroes and helpers who rise in moments of tragedy.
I would go to that marathon every single year. I call it my best worst day. As I looked left, I saw a plume of smoke coming up over the city street, and I was really concerned for the first time in my life that I was going to die. That was like my first major setback in my life. It taught me a lot about life and struggle and resilience and trauma, and you can manage through those difficult times. And what that did was lit a fire under my ass to say, hey, I should be a cop.
Thank you so much for tuning into our episode with Michael Chase. For more information on connecting with Michael or booking him for your next event, be sure to check out our description box below. And without further ado, let's move on to our episode.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. You guys are the best.
No, absolutely. So, for listeners who might not know your story, can you share a bit about your background and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? As I mentioned in the interview prior, I came out of the womb talking. I was a boisterous little guy, and at 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be a police officer.
Wow.
I had the privilege of being raised by two helpers. So my mom and dad, and they both gave their life to other people and doing things for other people. So my dad is still in law enforcement at the ripe age of 76. Uh, he works for the sheriff's department up in New Hampshire now, but he led a career in law enforcement forever. He went to Northeastern University in Boston and got an internship and started working in the town that I live in now, Danvers, Massachusetts. We're about 12 miles north of Boston. And he came as an intern and then stuck around and didn't have to leave. So he did about 40 plus years here in Danvers as a cop and retired after 3 years as the chief. So as a little guy, I used to watch him go off to work and put his uniform on, and I was just in awe of the superhero who went off to help people on their worst days and give back to a community that they loved, right? So that was all about. So that was pretty awesome as a little guy. And I knew at 5, I was like, that's it. I want to be a cop. But my mom on the other side, she is as stern and tough as my dad was. My mom was a softie, right? She was a nurse, and for over 40 years, she gave her life to that industry. Everything from operating rooms to emergency rooms. Her bedside manner is can still be seen as a nana, as a grandma, and she's pretty impressive. She is my favorite person in the world, other than my daughter. She's amazing. I owe a lot of my success and a lot of the places I am because of my mom, and she taught me a lot about being kind and doing those things and helping other people that can't help themselves. In the last years of her career, she was spending it just before COVID. Um, she was doing discharge planning and case management, so she was helping families transition people in care and sometimes in the final stages of their life. So that I couldn't pick a better person in the world to help other families and other people that needed them in some of their most difficult times. That's my mom. She's pretty incredible. So I was raised by two helpers, and that kind of led me on my journey. And as a young guy, like I said, that's what I wanted to do. And the other influential person in my life was my big brother. I had a brother who's 2.5 years older than me, and we fought like cats and dogs as kids. It was not that, silly little tussles. I mean, these were drag down brawls, right? But he was my best friend, and as we grew older, we became tighter and tighter and tighter. And he's still my go-to guy. A lot of the work that I do now is around trusted adults and explaining to kids the importance of having somebody in your corner when things get difficult. And my brother was one of those guys. My parents got divorced when I was 10 years old. Um, and Brad and I went through that process together as kids, and he helped me through that a lot. And in my own personal life, in my own personal journey, I went through my own divorce, and he was there through that for me and my daughter. He was amazing, and he's been outstanding, and he's in my corner. But as a young kid, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to follow like my father. I wanted to put the uniform on and go play superhero, cops and robbers, right? We grew up doing it. So that was the plan. And the plan kind of got derailed for me. I went to college with dreams of playing Division I soccer. And unfortunately, my senior year, I tore my ACL. So my career was over. My left knee was destroyed, and I lost my scholarship, some opportunities to continue to play. And I'd kind of that was like my first major setback in my life after divorce. My parents, obviously, that was a huge thing, but personally for me, that's the first thing that got in the way of any goals that I had. That was one of the things I really wanted to do as a little guy, is just play college soccer, and that was in the path. But unfortunately, it didn't work out, right? So you got to kind of pivot and figure things out. I landed at East Carolina University studying criminal justice, still with that goal of getting here. But in the time when I was coming through in the early 2000s, there was no jobs available in the police department. It's not like it is today. Right now, they're giving signing bonuses. They're recruiting people from job fairs. We can't get quality applicants anywhere. Right now, I guess Cape Coral, Florida is willing to pay their cops $95,000 a year with a $10,000 signing bonus, and they want you to come down there, and they still can't get people to do it. And we're having a
Wow.
really hard time across the country filling the void. That was not the case when I tried to get on. Even with a father who was the chief of police, it took me forever. So you have to take a test in Massachusetts called the civil service exam. And when you take that civil service exam, it kind of stacks you on a list. So how you score is how they're going to take. So if they need 5 guys, 12 people get interviews. If you're not in those top 12, then you don't get the shot. I always scored really high. I was always in the top 5, but unfortunately at that time there was no attrition. People weren't leaving. People weren't running away from this job. When you got into it, you stayed for 30 to 35 years. This is what you did. The job was great. The pay was good. You were well respected. The benefits were awesome. And the town that I lived in, a lot of the biggest homes in this community were owned by cops. They made good money, and it was a great, respectful profession. That has all changed. That
Wow.
has completely changed. It's on a 180-degree turn. Benefits aren't great. The pay is not good. The hours suck. Communities don't like you. You looked at like a bad guy. So that was kind of where we were at. But so that was what I was stuck with as a kid. So I'm coming out of college looking to get on the police department. It just wasn't something that was happening. Um, so I had to wait, and I was fortunate enough to find myself in special education. I landed working in an alternative high school with students that suffered from social, emotional, and behavioral difficulties. These were kids that were kicked out of their regular public ed for a variety of reasons: drugs, weapons, gang involvement, kids that refused to go to school, kids that struggled in a bunch of different ways. So this was a school that wasn't seen in any brochures. This wasn't a school that people sought after. It was a place where you landed, and typically it was like one step before you went off to juvenile detention or prison. And that's where I landed working, and I loved it. It was a great opportunity to build relationships and learn how to do that with students that didn't have those in their life. They didn't come from a house with 2 helpers. They didn't grow up like I grew up, and I had a lot of learning to do. And they taught me a lot about life and struggle and resilience and trauma. And it was the first time I would read case files about kids. It was some of the most horrific things that typically were reserved for horror films and things like that. And these kids had to push through and learn how to persevere, and show up every day. And my job and responsibility there was to build those relationships. So I was very fortunate that I landed there, and I was waiting my
Mhm.
time. And I'll be honest, when I interviewed with the principal, I said to him, "Hey, this is just a little short stop. I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but it ain't going to be long. I'm just waiting to get on the police department." And
Yeah.
yeah, it was great. So he was excited. He's like, "Oh, I got a guy with the mindset that wants to be a cop. That's great. We get kids that are at-risk youth.
Hmm.
It's a good connection." So I started off as like a paraprofessional working in a behavior team where I supported the behavior management component of the school. And I was in the classrooms a little bit and helping out. Then I did some time as a classroom teacher, teaching math. It was far less about math. These kids didn't care about algebra.
Mhm.
My job was to make sure they showed up every day. So
Absolutely.
sometimes I had classrooms only with 6 kids, and we had 6 18-year-old kids that were learning sixth grade math. And
Mhm.
like I said, it was more about developing those relationships, keeping them on the straight and narrow, and out of lockup. And that short little stint for me lasted 12 years.
That's amazing.
It was crazy. That's how long it took me to get on the police department. So what ended up happening was I tore my knee a couple more times, and I landed in the hospital with blood clots after one of those ACL reconstructions. And they went to both of my lungs, and it was a really scary time. And I'm fortunate to be here after that. So they placed me on a blood thinning medication called Coumadin, which is typically reserved for elders. If you ever heard of it at your age, it's because one of your grandparents are most likely on it.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I was
it's
just
it's
gonna
a
say
yeah,
that.
it's an anticoagulant that helps keep us alive. So that's kind of where I was at, and they put me on that. And as a young kid, there was no setbacks. I had to take a pill every morning. There was no true concern about the medication. I just had to watch what I had drank and just kind of do the right thing, and I did. And there was no problem with that. And we never thought it was going to get in the way of me getting on the police department, but it did. So I went and I finally got that call that I was ready to go, and my name came down, and we're off and ready. We're going to go. So I quit my job at the school.
Hmm.
I went and I did the physical abilities test. I met with a shrink and I passed that. And then I was off, and I had to just go to my last physical with the doctor, and I was on my way to the police academy. And up here, you go for 6 months You don't live there, but it's a 7 to 3 gig, and it takes up all your time with studying and everything else. It's like an intensive coursework
Geez.
to get ready to go to the job. And I was all excited. We had celebrated, and the doctor came in with a chapter and section. He opened up this massive book, and he said, "You're taking Coumadin." I said, "I am." And he said, "Well, unfortunately, on that medication, you can't be a cop in any state in the United States."
Oh my goodness.
I was blown away. My hematologist never talked to me about it. Because to be honest with you, there's other cops currently in every state in the United States who were on Coumadin. The fact is, I
Yeah.
was so young at 24 that there was nobody at 24 that was taking Coumadin for the rest of their life,
Wow, you're only
except for me. I
20.
was like one of the few people. So it was the first time that they had seen it, and I realized that that was it. So
Jeez.
luckily, got my job back at the school and went back and had to put my tail between my legs and tell my principal I wasn't going to the academy, and then I was going
Oh
to have to
man.
pivot, and special education was probably going to be my future. But
Wow.
fortunately for me, I loved it, right? So I was landing in a good spot. So kind of that's the basis of my career. But spoiler alert here, right? I am a cop. I landed there, but that never would have happened if it wasn't for an experience that an experience that took place in April of 2013. As a school teacher in Massachusetts, the greatest part about being a teacher or working in education is absolutely the schedule. There's no denying that. 8 weeks off from the summer, you get 10 days at Christmas, you get a spring and fall break. So our spring break lands in April. It's celebrated the second week of April every year. And in Boston, we celebrate what's called Patriots Day. And it's awesome. It's the first Monday of April vacation every year. And in Boston, it is my favorite day. It's to live here, to embrace everything the Patriots Day brings. It's pretty immense. So the Boston Red Sox play every year. It's the earliest first pitch of baseball on that Monday. They throw first pitch at 11. It's the earliest first pitch of Major League Baseball all season long. But the big event that day on top of that is the Boston Marathon. So between 30 and 40,000 people pour into the city to take on that trek at 26.2 miles, which is pretty incredible. So I would go to that marathon every single year and embrace
Wow.
everything that race would talk about, right? So it's doing something for somebody else with zero expectation of anything in return. People are running for sick children, deceased family members, foundations that are doing amazing work to help people all across the world. So these people are coming. It's more than a race. It's not just to go run 26 miles because they're crazy. It's because they're going to do something for a foundation or for a family member or somebody they care or something that's near and dear to their heart.
Of course.
So the fundraising is just, it raises millions and millions and millions of dollars each and every year. And as a fan, I would go down and find myself as close to the finish line as possible to cheer all these crazy people on who's decided to take on this afternoon, right? So each and every year I'd go down and figure it out. And in 2013, it was the same. I woke up and jumped on a packed commuter rail and made my way to Boston. And I bumped into an old friend from high school I played baseball with. His name was Dan Marshall. And Dan was like, "Hey, Chasey, I'm heading to the Atlantic Fish Company." And I had never heard of the restaurant. So I punched it into my phone as Danny kind of got pushed by the crowd of people into another car, and I had lost contact with him. And I got directions to the Atlantic Fish Company. So I got dropped off at Copley Square, which is an area right down by the finish line. I made my way to the restaurant, and there he was. He had 7 or 8 family members with him right out on a patio in front of this beautiful restaurant. And I joined them, and it was amazing. And we were cheering everybody on. And just before 2:30 that day, around 2:30, two brothers from the area had decided that that day was going to represent something completely different for them. They made their way into the city, and before they left home that morning, they packed 2 backpacks full of pressure cookers. And in those pressure cookers was nails and BBs and metal and anything sharp that could cause as much chaos and harm as possible. And they came with a totally different intention. They weren't there to cheer anybody on. So the first brother made his way past us and went down right to the actual finish line out in front of Marathon Sports, which is a iconic running store right there at the finish line in Boston. And for whatever reason, the second brother came and posted up about 15 feet to my left and put his backpack down and was just waiting for what was going to unfold. And on that day, it was the trifecta of Boston sports. The Bruins happened to have a decent team and were playing in the playoffs that night. So my brother and sister-in-law just happened to be coming to that game. They weren't at the race with me, but they were coming in early, and they were going to come over and have an adult drink and meet up at the bar and cheer on some people for a couple hours before they headed back to the Boston Garden to watch the Bruins. So I was on the phone with my brother when we heard and felt the first concussion from the bomb. It was about 200 yards away, and it struck us all. There's video footage that's available. I use it in my keynote talks when I talk about my experience, and you can see the whole crowd just kind of turn. And like I said, I was on the phone with my brother, so I had the phone up to my ear. And as I looked left, I saw a plume of smoke coming up over the city street. And your brain starts to play tricks on you in situations like this. But I knew that there was no celebratory cannon at 2:30 or almost 3 o'clock. All the elite runners were long gone. They were home and resting. These were just our typical, run-of-the-mill athletes who were going out there and doing their best to finish this race. And within 12, 15 seconds later, the second explosion happened 15 feet to my left.
Mm.
The concussion knocked the table that I was standing at over. I got dumped onto the ground. Um, and I left the phone open, which I didn't realize until later, and I stuck it in my pocket. So my brother was at the Boston Garden making his way over to find me, and he's listening to this all unfold on his telephone. He can hear the horror and the screams and all the stuff, but he can't get to me. And he, like I tell you, he is my protector, and he always has been. He's always had my back. As many times as we scrapped as kids, I knew if I ever got into any kind of problems, I knew that Brad was my first call, and he would be there in a second. And we happened to be on the phone, and he was stuck. So in the aftermath of that blast, the smell of the sulfur and the taste that overtook you, the ringing in my ears was so incredible. I lost 80% of the hearing in my left ear from the concussion of the bomb, and I suffered a concussion. I covered two of the women that I was with as the glass from above us started to crash down upon the patio that we were sitting on. And the tree that we were near had set fire. It looked like I had a sunburn, like I'd been sitting in the Vegas heat for too long. My face was bright red, just from the fire that came out of that explosion of that backpack. And I was really concerned for the first time in my life that I was going to die. But things kind of just slowed down. It's funny how your body works with the adrenaline dump and everything that happens. I was able to escort those two women into a small alcove between the two restaurants, the Forum, which is no longer there, and the Atlantic Fish Company where we were standing. And I just know that I knew that we had to get out of the fray until we could figure out what was going on. I was really concerned about a third explosion. I didn't know what to expect. So I kind of covered them, and as soon as the smoke started to clear a little bit, about 20 seconds after the second bomb, I was able to make our way back across the face of the restaurant and get them inside. The staff people there at Atlantic Fish Company were unbelievable. It turned into like a triage center. They were welcoming people that could move inside the restaurant to get them away from any of the other stuff that could potentially happen. And there was just a lot of panic and a lot of fear in everybody there. It was a restaurant that served $50 steaks, and all of a sudden it would look like a third world country out front. And as I moved those women across the face of that restaurant, I could see the horror and the disaster of everything that was going on the other side.
Wow.
Lucky for me, as I said, somebody on Coumadin who's on a blood thinner. I was shielded from the blast by a planter that separated those two restaurants, the Forum and Atlantic Fish. It was about 3.5 feet high. It was built out of cinder block, and it was cased in plywood, and there was some beautiful flowers for the springtime. That was just a monumental piece that kind of just separated the two places. But that thing saved my life. If I was cut in any way, I would have bled out instantly on that street. So that saved my life. I was in the right place at the right time. On the wrong day, but it all worked out. And if I was anyplace else, I'm pretty positive I wouldn't be here.
Mm.
So I moved those girls into the restaurant, and as I made my way, like I said, picture was becoming clear of what was going on in the street and the carnage and all the disaster and the horror. I recognized that there was a little girl who was in the middle of Boylston Street. So I moved the two women inside, and I turned around immediately, and I went back to give her aid.
Oh.
The first gentleman I saw that was approaching me, it looked like his clothes had just been blown off his body. His shirt was tattered, his pants were all a mess. But he was conscious and he was alert and he was mobile, so he was able to move. So I just basically guided him in his state into the restaurant to the first person, and then I handed him off, and that's when I made my way back out to Boylston. I hopped the barricade that was there, and I made my way out right into the racetrack. And there was a 6-year-old girl who was laying there with her father. And there was a man in a red shirt. His name was Matt Patterson. He was an off-duty Lynn firefighter, an Army veteran who had done several tours overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he was calm under pressure, and somebody that if you're in a mess, he's a good guy to have with you. He's a true hero. And Matt had motioned to me as I was making my way there. And just before I got to Matt, I had lifted my phone. I don't remember doing this, but my brother recalls it like it was yesterday. And I told Brad to get out of the city because there's kids that are hurt. And I hung up. I put my phone away. So I knelt down next to this little girl who had lost her leg from just below her knee down. And Matt was there as well. And I took off my belt and I used it as a tourniquet, and I wrapped it around her leg to try to control some of the bleeding. And I did my best to communicate with her. But we were both so close to the bomb that communication was really hard because the ringing was just so prevalent. But we did our best. And I tried to console her, even though I didn't know her fate. I tried to encourage her to stay with me and try to communicate. And we made the determination that we were going to have to move her. The ambulances, part of the emergency operations plan in the city of Boston, was to not rush everybody into the bomb site. They wanted to keep everybody out for the same reasons I was concerned, third, fourth, fifth explosions. So we knew that they had stopped. We could see them in the distance, and we knew we had to move her. She could have been in really bad shape. So Matt had told me, hey, listen, we got to go. we're going to move her. He's like, do not let go of that tourniquet. I'm going to scoop her up. You support her leg, and we're going to make a move for it. So we started to run down the street about 70, 100 yards to the awaiting emergency personnel. Her father and oldest brother were right behind us. I was trying my best to communicate with him, explain what was happening, and we made a dart for it. And when we got to the ambulance, I was able to pass the little girl off to an EMT and support her leg and keep that tourniquet as tight as we could as she was moved in the back of an ambulance. As the father came back out, I talked to her dad very, very briefly as he was screaming, my son, my son, my son, and pointing towards the epicenter of the blast. So I ran right back to it. I went back to where I was initially. And when I got back there, what I didn't realize was Matt had beaten me there. He didn't stop to talk to Dad. He just went back. And Matt and I returned to the scene. And that's where we found Martin Richard. Martin was an 8-year-old little boy who was with his sister. And unbeknownst at the time, that was the little girl that I helped carry to the ambulance. So her brother was 8. And unfortunately, he was our youngest victim that day. Martin didn't make it. We did everything we could to help support him, but his injuries were just too much. So we stayed on scene. I stayed on scene for about 20 or 30 minutes to help support the arriving first responders, EMTs, firemen, police, everybody that was coming, all the professionals that were there to support all those other people that were injured. And there was a lot of them. A lot of people had lower leg extremity injuries. There was a lot of tourniquets being placed to support a lot of people. And that's what I call my best worst day. It was really difficult. And a few minutes later, when everybody was there and the scene was secured, I gave my information to the police department. I actually met up with my friend Dan Marshall, who had happened to be there with me at the very end, and we made our way to go try to find our family who had been separated from. So Dan and I started walking several blocks with the crowd of people that were still some around, and we made our way a few blocks away from the blast site, and not too long later, there was my brother running against the crowd, like a salmon upstream. Everyone's going in this way, and here comes Brad weaving through the crowd, and I just happened to bump into him. There was no cell phone service. They had shut down the towers, and Brad was there. I ran into him in a crowded city street with hundreds of people around, and we embraced, and he brought me back to his car. I was able to reconnect. His wife was with him. She was a nurse practitioner at Mass General, so she was somebody good to have with us. But we decided to leave the city so that I could be seen someplace else, knowing that the volume of people that would maybe be going to these Boston hospitals. So we came back towards the North Shore where I live, about 12 miles north of the city. I was seen and eventually treated and released from the hospital. And that was it. And then the real work had to start on what was I going to do to try to get through what I had just experienced. And that was crazy, to be honest with you. And so, as I said, like with this horrific experience, right? I had to sit down and meet with therapists and kind of go through a lot of things. And in doing that, I saw a video in part of my processing, which was not great. My therapist hated it. I tried to read and watch everything I could read and watch, and she was like, "You need to stop that. That it just keeps, re-traumatizing you." But I needed to have all the information in my hands for whatever reason. And one of the videos I did see on YouTube was there was a police officer with the little girl that I helped. He was there before me. So within 30 seconds of the blast, he had been to her aid and then left. And I don't know what was more critical than a 6-year-old who lost her leg. And that's not a judgment of him. That's not anything. That was his decision to make in the moment, and I don't have all the information, so I'm not going to judge that individual. But what that did was lit a fire under my ass to say, hey, I should be a cop. There's no reason that I can't be a police officer because some medication I'm taking.
Mm-hmm.
So I called my doctor and I fought with him. I got 6th, 7th, 8th opinions. I was the worst patient. My doctor actually threw me out of his office and stopped taking my phone calls. But I wasn't going to take no for an answer, right? So I knew what I needed to do. So I finally found a physician, a cardiologist who agreed with me, and we came off the medication. And I called the Danvers Police Department, and I'm like, I'm ready. I had still sat on the list. My name was still there from when I took the test many, many years ago. So I was technically the next person up to be hired, which I was. And then the rest is history. And now I'm fortunate to finally land in the dream job that I wanted since a 5-year-old kid. And I was able, after a couple of years of playing cops and robbers at night, to land a job at an amazing high school, working as a school resource officer, being able to give back to a community. So it's the best of both worlds. I'm back in a school, working with kids, helping individuals out. And I got the fortunate opportunity to travel around the country and speak to audiences, whether it's schools, business leaders, it doesn't matter. Whoever wants to listen, I'll tell. And it's been a great experience.
What kind of kept you going in like those hard moments when you saw that little girl or
Here's the thing, right? I'm hanging out at a bar drinking with my friends,
right?
and all of a sudden I'm swooped into like the worst day ever, right? And this is the other part that I talk about all the time is that was my worst day.
Right.
right? You both have had your worst days. How are you going to manage your worst day? Right. And I talk to kids about this all the time. And every year I speak to the students at this school. Every freshman that comes into this high school, they get a talk. I give them the 60-minute keynote. We walk through exactly what I just shared with you in a 60-minute talk with slides and video and evidence. And they're all like, oh my goodness, like, how did you do that? And my message to them is not, it doesn't have to be a terrorist attack that's going to knock you off your feet, right?
Mhm.
It could be the divorce of a parent. It could be the loss of a sibling, your own medical journey. We have a beautiful student here who's an amazing kid she's battling cancer. She's taking it head on, right? Everybody's day, everyone's worst day is their own. So it's about building a skill set so that you can manage through those difficult times. And it doesn't have to be a terrorist attack. And it's still the same approach no matter what. I promise you that I sat with kids for years in my office and gave great advice about going to see a therapist. You need to work with the professionals in your life. But I was never doing that for myself. I didn't do that at 10 when my parents got divorced. I
Right.
just tried to figure it out. And it was the absolute wrong way to do it, right? Um, if I didn't go to therapy and work with professionals to figure out how to fall asleep again, get back on my feet and eat and drink water and take care of my basic needs, I don't know where I would be, to be honest with you. It's professional help that I needed to get back on the right track. I showed up at work a week later when the school reopened, not having done any work, just trying to get by, a shell of myself. I looked okay on the outside. In the inside, I was an absolute disaster. I had my first panic attack, my first flashback, things like that I never knew how to handle, but I've been working with kids for 15 years that have been struggling with all that stuff from previous abuse and all this stuff that they came to the table with that I tried to help them with. Now I had a little bit more perspective on that, right? So I think that the message I'm trying to share with you is, yeah, it's crazy, right? That's a wild story. If I've heard somebody tell me that story, I'd be like, oh, wow, okay, that's a lot. But whatever you've experienced in your life is structurally your worst day, right? And I hope that people can go out and take something from my story and say, that was awful. In the moment, done differently, absolutely. But that's how we learn from experiences, right? As we go back, break it down a little bit, and how could we have done things better? What went right, what went wrong, and what could we have done differently? And that's what I've done in that experience, and hopefully I can do that with every experience in my life, and learn and grow. And that's what it's all about.
Wow. And I think it says a lot too about how you talk about the support system you had when you were growing up and how you wanted to be that supportive person for other people at this point in your career now. It really speaks a lot about the type of person that you are, and it's very inspiring.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and everybody needs somebody, right? And my message to my students is you're never alone. And that's my message to you too as well, sitting here in front of me, right? And all the students that I've worked with at James Madison now, I said, you guys are part of my social network. You're with me. So you're stuck with me. Sorry. That's how it works. But if you need anything, right? And I mean this, I say this to audiences. I could speak to 500 professionals that are small business owners or a sports program or whatever it might be at a college campus, a high school. I mean it when I say, like, I'm an email or a phone call away.
Hmm.
I'm not the smartest person on the planet, but I promise you, I will work as hard as I can to support you in your most difficult times, whether it has to be, no matter where we land on it. I'm not going to have all the answers. I can promise you that. I tell my students that every day. I make mistakes consistently, constantly. I'll make 6 more before we even get off the phone today, right? But the idea is that we can figure anything out together because there's not going to ever be a stone that's left unturned. I will do everything I can and seek the greatest network of people that I can find to figure out if you have a problem, we can figure it out. I want to make sure kids, especially kids, but adults too, know that they're not alone. And when I speak to audiences, I take a minute every single time and I speak directly to the guys in the audience because we're the worst, like the absolute worst, especially guys my age, like 40, 50, 60. We grew up different. Mental health was a joke for kids our age. It wasn't anything that we looked at. And I think we thank God we do such a much better job in society today supporting those efforts. We do that at school here. It's always a constant thing. It's everywhere, and I think that is so important that we take care and we recognize that mental health it's a critical component to our well-being, and we got to make sure that we know that everybody knows that there's somebody in your corner. I'm always going to be there for you, and you're never alone.
That's great. That's fantastic. And I mean, especially now, I think we're seeing a big movement towards talking about men's mental health and making it more just talked about and allowing men to feel more comfortable talking about it because previously it's like, oh, men don't have emotions, like just hide it away. That's not the
There you
healthy
go.
way to go about life, right?
No, and
So,
it was the way it was, right?
yeah.
And I think my parents' generation didn't know any better, and it was always, yeah, pull up your big boy pants and get back to whatever you're doing.
Hmm.
And that's how they were taught. And thankfully, we had a pivot in the world, and people recognizing the importance of it. I
Hmm.
agree.
And being an advocate for it as well is so important.
Huge.
Is there a specific moment when you decided you wanted to turn your experience into something positive for others, or has that always just been deeply rooted within you from the beginning?
Yeah, so with this experience, what I experienced on the street in Boston, there definitely was one pivot point or one moment in time where I was like, here we are. This is going to change things for me. I was requested to, through a friend to come speak at a conference. And the conference was just outside the city, but it was made up of those people that created the emergency response plan for the city of Boston. So it was firemen, paramedics, police, fire, all the big wigs in the city that were coming together to, to take a look at what took place there. They were going to review their policies and procedures and see kind of what they could have done differently. And it was an opportunity for a couple of people that were impacted to come and speak. So that's what I did. They invited me to come up. I had never spoken truly in front of a crowd. I coached high school sports, so I had spoken in front of crowds at banquets and things like that, but nothing like this. Nothing raw, true emotion about my worst day. And I got up there and I stumbled through it. I pushed through it. It was hard. I think I probably did about 25 minutes just to explain what I saw, how it impacted me, and all the rest. And at the end of that, I walked away a totally different person. People were coming up to me, thanking me for sharing my experience and how impactful it was for them in various areas of their life. And then I continued to get phone calls and emails after that from people that were in the crowd that day that were impacted in a positive way. It's something that would be hanging on me, and almost getting in front of people and talking about it. It was therapeutic in a way. And it was finally taking something that was so negative and was making something positive out of it. And that was so impactful for me, and I felt important. So that first talking experience where I spoke in front of a crowd of strangers and kind of, I was, doing my best to dig deep and to express kind of everything that I had felt and held on to, and wasn't able to share with other people. It was raw, and it was emotional, and I felt like it was impactful. So that was kind of the change in terms of the speaking thing. And then now the opportunity comes up, and I'm doing a lot of talking and moving and getting around the country a little bit and speaking to a bunch of different crowds and things like that. So in the terms of like changing this from my worst day, I call it my best worst day. It's now given me an opportunity to hopefully impact and make positive changes in people's lives. Just speaking about the before, the during, and the after of what I experienced.
I mean, I know, I'm sure Elizabeth could agree. Like, I feel inspired by your story. And again, like, my worst day doesn't compare to your worst day,
Like I
but
said,
it's
it's
still
not
a
about
bad
that, right?
day.
Right.
So,
It's not about that. It is, and it is. It's how are you going to manage those things?
yeah.
And we hope that we can limit those for the rest of our lives, and we hope that
Right.
I hope that that was truly my worst day of my life, and I'm not going to have to put myself or find myself in a situation like that. I hope you don't either. But if we ever get there, we know that this,
Know how to handle
hopefully we're
it.
developing the skills to better handle it when we come out on the other end.
Mhm.
I now know that the importance of therapy and working through those things where that was so foreign to me before. So I know that I'm more equipped now to manage those things, to have a less of an impact on my day-to-day life, my health and wellness, and just the way that I handle my day-to-day business.
Let's switch gears a little bit
Mhm.
and kind of talk about Where's Woody. I think we're just kind of interested how this partnership came about, maybe why you were so interested in Where's Woody and vice versa. Just kind of hear a little bit about your guys' partnership, how it's been so far, and what the experience is like behind the scenes now.
It was a crazy story, right? I'm literally at a field hockey tournament in Delaware with my daughter. She's in high school. She's got aspirations of playing at the next level. So part of that is going to these showcases so she can be recruited and seen around the world, right? So we're at the end of day one, and we're in between her first and second game of day one. And there's a bunch of pop-up shops and people down there, vendors selling all kinds of different things, from field hockey cleats to sticks to ice cream and all kinds of crazy things in between. And Where's Woody was there with a pop-up shop, and there was a gentleman selling for them, and he had racks of clothing. And my daughter was, I was talking to somebody, and she gets my attention and calls me over to the area. And she's like, Dad, look at this stuff. So she holds a sweatshirt up and hands it to me. And as soon as I put my hands on it, I was like, this is different than anything I've ever felt in my life. This stuff is amazing, right? So I got chatting it up with the guy, clearly, right? I'm talking. So I talk it up with the sales rep, and he just starts chatting me up. And he tells me that they're a Cape Cod-based company in Massachusetts. And you could tell by my accent that maybe I was pretty close by, which we happen to be, right? So um, I bought a sweatshirt. And the next day we went back, the same guy was there, and we were walking through the area again. And I bought a second sweatshirt because the quality of the stuff it's through the roof. It's unbelievable. So as soon as I put it on, I knew that that's what we needed. And then that following Father's Day, there was a gift from my daughter, and it was a sweatshirt from Where's Woody. So as my speaking career is kind of moving on and moving forward, one of the things that I customarily do is when I get to an event, if somebody that's hired me, I bring them a gift to say thank you for having me, and it's just kind gesture to kind of pay it forward and thank them for bringing me in. And I thought the best way to do that was to give them some gear, right? So it helps promote my business, but at the same time, it's a thank you thing. So what better gear to give away than the Where's Woody? So I had reached out to them to see where they get their stuff and is that something they're making or where they're finding it. And I didn't realize at the time, to be honest with you, they're working with small businesses in colleges and on high school campuses. They're setting up online stores and really working with all kinds of people to help support them in their mission. And there was a phone call that happened. I got on the phone with Mike Brennan, who's their CFO, and we hit it off immediately. It was incredible. We share a lot of the same social circles in a way. Mike is a former educator, former high school administrator. His wife has a connection to the Richard family that I helped that day, which was small world gets small really fast. She works at a school where those kids attended, and we had no idea before any of this, right?
Wow.
So long story short, me and Mike hit it off. He was, part of the process was, what are we going to do? How can we create some of this cool stuff you're thinking about? So the logo that I have, it's an artist rendition. It's on my hat. It's an artist rendition of the shoes I was wearing that day in Boston. In the aftermath of everything, a lot of the runners were returning to Boston when the city opened up after the manhunt was over and the city was on lockdown. This was the first time we'd ever seen a major city like this shut down. This was like pre-COVID. We didn't think it could be done. I'll never forget the video on the nightly news of just the ghost town of Boston. There was nobody in the streets. No one was allowed out. There was a manhunt. Those two individuals that were responsible for all that terror were on the loose, and they were looking for them. And they were actively being hunted by law enforcement from across the world. So as soon as the city reopened, we were able to go back in, and I was one of the first ones down there. I was waiting to get in, and I did. And I went right down to the Boston Public Library where these memorials were set up to honor the victims and everything that had happened. So people were taking their shoes and they were writing on them, and they were hanging them up over the barriers and all the kinds of different things. So I did the same thing with my sneakers. So my logo is an artist rendering of the shoes that I left at the memorial that day, and it's got my signature with my website. So I'd sent that artwork over to Mike and his team at Where's Woody, and they crafted this patch, which is on my hat. And he sent it back, and they were immediately like, they fell in love with the art. I loved it, and we were off and running. But it was clear in my first conversations with Mike and his team over there that this is way more than just like a guy who's going to sell me a hat, right? Who's going to mock up a T-shirt that I'm wearing, or like a sweatshirt that we did. And this wasn't about buying gear. I'd coached soccer at the high school level for 25 years. I've had enough business calls with people that are trying to sell me Nike sweatshirts with my team logo on it. That was not this. This was a connection that started off with me and him chopping it up about how we can make this work. And he is a lifelong friend at this point. He's somebody that now I can see myself collaborating with, traveling with, getting out there and doing some things. It's been absolutely spectacular. They took a vision that I had and they made it 20 times better. They've made this process way bigger than, like I said, like selling a T-shirt or a hat. And it's something that we're looking to do. So each year now, because I was injured at the marathon, the Boston Athletic Association gifts one bib to each one of the people that were hurt and injured. So I can do what I want with that bib. If I was able to run a marathon, which I never will, I could run on behalf of myself in honor of what happened. But they also allow me to gift that to somebody else, which is pretty outstanding because it comes with zero expectation for charitable contribution. There's no fundraising expectation with it. So they give it to individuals and they can do what they want with it. And this year, I'm pretty excited that one of the teachers at the school that I work at, who's a dear friend of mine, his name is Brian Scott, his father's battling stage 4 colon cancer. And Brian's a runner, an athlete, a young guy. And his family's created this Team 14 foundation that supports other people dealing with the same adversity that his father's going through. His dad's a retired cop who initially was looking at some really difficult paths, right? He's been doing treatments for a long time. He's doing really well, all things considered. His doctors are really happy with his progress for a stage 4 individual. And he's beating the odds, and he's working his ass off to do what he needs to do, and he's a tremendous human. And Brian's going to run this year in honor of his dad, which is pretty awesome with the bib that I have.
Wow.
So we're passing that forward and bringing some awareness to them and their foundation. And the first thing I thought of was how do we can combine their efforts with Where's Woody? So we had a meeting with Mike, and Mike and his team over there already met with us, and we did a couple phone calls back and forth. And they're in the process right now of mocking up some gear for them, right? So we're going to sell that stuff through fundraising efforts to support his dad and their foundation and everything. And I can't think of a better partnership than working with the team at Where's Woody, because, like I said, this isn't a clothing company. This isn't some brand. It's not. This is like a homegrown unit of amazing individuals who know this is way bigger than gear. It's way bigger than a hat. And that's the amazing work that this company's doing across the country. We didn't meet by chance. You know, it wasn't this. The world puts people together for the right reasons, and I'm really excited about working with them. They've made this amazing. They've taken the stress out of all of it, and they put out some of the best stuff I've ever seen in my life. So I'm pretty
Yeah,
excited about it.
that's
Yeah, it's a
really
win-win.
exciting. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they came to our class and had a whole clothing rack of all of their items. And not only were
Yeah.
they extremely personable, it was both mics.
Yep.
But they
They're
were
both amazing
also
guys. Yeah.
both incredible and they were so knowledgeable and you could tell that they really cared for their own brand. It
Yep.
was fantastic to see.
I'm glad you got to meet them. Yeah, they told me they came down to JMU for homecoming,
Hmm.
and they were going to go to the football game, and they were going to storm campus a little bit. And
Yeah,
from what I saw and what I heard from Mike, it sounds like it was an amazing experience for everybody. So I'm glad they
it
were
was
able to get out there.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And to wrap it up, what do you want listeners to take away from your story, your partnership with Where's Wordy, and the message you're putting out into the world?
So it's like, it's a big question. I think that
Yeah, of
we
course.
touched on pretty much all of that, to be honest with you. I think that I want people to understand that no matter what happens in your life, you're never alone. You never have to tackle any problem, big or small, by yourself. And I hope that everybody has somebody that they can lean on in their worst times. Here at the school that I work at, I created a program called TA Connection, the Trusted Adult Network. And what we do is we survey all 2,000 high school students, and we ask them who their trusted adult is on campus and who their trusted adult is at home. I want to know each one of my students. I want to make sure that each one of those kids has somebody that they can rely on a tough day. And not only for themselves. So if I was concerned about a buddy of mine, do I feel comfortable going to that adult to say, hey, X, Y, and Z, this person's struggling with suicidal ideation, self-injurious behavior. They just went through their first breakup in high school, which sucks, right? So, or they got cut from the baseball team, or they're struggling with X, Y, and Z. We want to make sure that each and every individual has somebody in their corner and they know who to go to and how to access that. And I also do that survey so that we look back on things and we can say, anytime somebody finds out I work in a school as a cop, they're like, how are we going to stop these active shooters? How are we going to prevent these mass tragedies? And this is the only thing I can come up with. I think that every time we look back at any case study, and there's just far too many of them now in this country because of all the atrocity that we've seen, there's not a chance that any one of those individuals who was responsible for that horror had somebody that they could go to. So I want to know which kid says, I don't have a trusted adult at home and I don't have a trusted adult at school. And that's the hard work we have to do. We have to then identify those students and then start to build those bridges naturally. That's not like I sit them in my office and I'm like, I'm going to be a trusted adult and this is how we're going to do it. It's more genuine and more, organic than that. But we have to know who those kids are too, because I want to make sure that we can find the right people to put in these kids' lives so that they can feel supported and they don't feel like they're alone. And that's the ultimate thing, right? So I hope that's what people take away when I speak to student audiences. When I speak to adult audiences across the country, whether you're a school resource officer, a cop, a PR professional, small business owner, the coach of a college, program, I want them to understand a bunch of things. We're all the same people, right? So the same message I give to kids, the same message I want to give to those adults too, right? How are we going to change the community that we live in? How are we going to impact people on a positive level? And I want them to know they're not alone as well. And that's just as important, right? So I'm passionate about keeping schools safe and working with kids, positively impacting, cultures and other industries as I travel and speak. And I am just blessed and fortunate to meet all those people over at Where's Woody, and that we just align so much and so easily on so many things. And like I said, they are far more than just a clothing company. Mike Brennan came out here to tour my school. I introduced him to my athletic director. He wants to come here in a second. We have a marketing department here with students, and he wants to get in there and work and just dig into the community here and build through programming and build partnerships. He's not looking to sell sweatshirts. He's not. That's not his goal in this thing. His thing is to go out and positively impact kids, give them a great experience, take them out to the shop in South Boston and show them where this stuff is made and walk them through the process and teach them things. He's like, we're going to offer our kids internships and co-op opportunities. This isn't, like I said, this isn't a clothing company. They're making a movement, and I'm happy to be aligned with them in any portion of this thing, and I'm ready to ride with them. So I'm blown away by everything that they've done, opportunities such as this. We never would have met if it wasn't for them.
Wow.
And I think it's a great opportunity. I've spoken with your instructor. I'm hoping I'm going to have the opportunity to come out to JMU next semester and talk to whoever's ready to listen. I don't care if you
Mhm.
get the entire campus or 15 kids in a room. I would love to come out and meet y'all and hang out and do it. And it's Mike Brennan said he's ready to come with me. I can't go to JMU without him, so that's a good sign. So no, I appreciate you guys having me here. I know this has been a long semester for you. And as you're getting ready to move on to your next stages in life, you're getting ready to graduate.
Yeah.
Um, it's a scary time, right? I joke all the time. I'm 46. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And I hope I hope you guys find your way sooner than later. And if you don't, there's no worry in that either, right?
Right.
The world's always evolving, and you'll run into your barriers and things in your professional life, but you're coming out of a great university, and you guys get the sky's the limit. So I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck in your final days of college. Enjoy it, soak up every minute.
Yeah.
You're going to be walking across the stage before you know it, so don't blink.
Whew.
But
That's
as I
crazy.
said to you earlier,
Honestly.
yeah, it's crazy, right? And there's a whole world out there waiting for you. So go out there and just positively impact everybody you can. Every conversation, I want you to leave that other person feeling better than they walked into it. Whether it's a
Yeah.
total stranger or somebody you've known your entire life. I tell kids all the time, pick up your phone and call your grandparents, tell them you love them, and just do what you can do, right? Um, Control what you can control. And I think being kind and living with an intentionally kind forefront in your mind. And like I say, kindness isn't something that's just some crazy outlandish thing we've never heard of, but it's about putting that in the forefront of our mind so that when we
Yeah.
can remind ourselves that living an intentionally kind life is an easy thing to do, and it greatly impacts people far greater than we ever understand. So go out there and make a difference. And I know that you two can do it. And I've been honored to meet both of you. And I look forward to anything that you need in the future. I truly, truly mean it. I hope you understand that I'm here for you and you guys are never alone.
And it's National World Kindness Day, so how
It
ironic.
certainly is. I heard that on the radio on the work today. That was
How
great.
ironic.
Listen,
Meant to be.
perfect, right? Meant to be. Meant to be. Yes.
Well,
We'll
thank you so
celebrate.
much for meeting with us.
I am honored.
Obviously,
Believe me, I am honored.
yeah,
I appreciate
this
it.
has been a huge opportunity for us, and we're so happy that we got to be
Mhm.
with you. And
I'm the lucky one. I promise.
yeah,
Is there
Oh.
Thank you, girl.
anything, final things you want to say, like any promotions or anything you want to put in here?
Well, we were talking in the pre-meeting here, and I just wrote a book.
no
Crazy enough.
way.
Yeah, I just finished it. It was nuts. So I was on the stage a few years ago, and someone's like, "That was crazy story. You got to put that in writing." And I was like, "I'm not that smart."
Yeah.
But I wrote a book like it reads more conversational than it does like an English lit test, you know. So somebody
Congratulations.
asked me, "Well, who are you going to get to edit it?" And I said, "I don't think I need to because there's no red pen you need to put on this thing because it's written like I talk." So, but I'm excited. So I'm in the final stage. I just finally put the pen down the other night for the first time, and I'm off and running. It's called A Reflective Journey. It's my story from when I was a kid. It's the name of my company. It's my story from when I was a little kid, and it's all the way through Boston and all my experiences getting on stage and some of the work and just the influences I've had in my life and what I'm looking to do moving forward. So hopefully I'm going to get that out on the shelves sooner than later.
Yeah.
But you can, check it out. I'm going to be on my website at michaelchasespeaks.com. Follow me on social media and we can take a journey together. And if anybody ever needs anything, shoot me a DM and we'll work together to figure it out.